Dear student, welcome to my online class presentation and this class for MA Part 1 student. Before starting my session, I would like to introduce myself. That is, I am Polirani Shaha, Assistant Professor, Ananda Mohan College. I hope all of you are fine and safe and stay at home. You see, the name of the topic is My Last Touches by Robert Browning. A very much famous poem of Robert Browning, and it is one kind of dramatic monologue. Before starting my session, I would like to say something about Robert Browning. Robert Browning, born in South London, was an English poet and playwright during the Victorian age. He was born on 1812 and died on 1889. Browning is well known even today for his use of the dramatic monologue, irony, and commentary on the social matters. Dark humor and rich vocabulary are the characteristic elements of the Browning poetry. Browning actually, apart from the other poets, was his use of the dramatic monologue. Although he didn't invent the form, but the range of experimental elements, he allowed him to introduce a speaker who gave the poem personality. What makes actually his monologue special is the lyrical quality. The dramatic monologue actually bears the speaker's soul. So his monologue are also called the soul studies. In his word, the soul is the stage, moods and thoughts are character. Actually, this is the main characteristics of the dramatic monologue. That is, the soul is the stage and moods and thoughts are the character. He actually English poet of Romantic age, well known for his dramatic monologue, and dramatic monologue actually with the lyrical qualities. His dramatic monologue specially bears the speaker's soul. What is dramatic monologue? Dramatic monologue actually it consists of a single speaker and another silent listener, shows the psychology of the reader, actually a one-sided conversation with a silent partner. This is the dramatic monologue. That is, dramatic monologue, the main characteristics of the dramatic monologue. This poem is that type of dramatic monologue because it consists entirely of the words of a single speaks. Actually, the speaker of the poem is the Duke, and there is another person, that is it has the silent listener, and this poem shows the psychology of the speaker to the reader. Whenever we read this poem, we find that My Last Touches, first published in 1842 and written in heroic couplets, tone is formal, even it conversational, based on the incidents in the life of Duke of Ferrara in Italy. Basically, this poem is based on true history. This poem, the speaker of the poem is the Duke. The Duke reveals his nature and the personality through the way he speaks. Settings of the poem: the private art gallery in the palace of the Duke. This is the setting of the poem. This dramatic monologue, that is My Last Touches, actually shows the psychology of the speaker to the reader. Speaker who is not the poet. Easily one-sided conversation with a silent partner, and Duke discussed the portrait of his late wife with an envoy from the court whose daughter he intends to marry. We become aware that we become aware that he was an arrogant man, will do anything to satisfy the demands of his arrogance. Speaks informally to a social inferior, the representative of a wealthy court whose daughter the Duke actually hopes to marry. Most of the poem is spent talking about his last touches based on the incidents in the life of Alfonso, the second Alfonso, Duke of the Ferrara in Italy. And the Duke's first wife, Lucrezia, died in 1561, after they had been married for 3 years. Duke repeatedly reveals his arrogant egotism. This setting of this poem is actually in a private art gallery in the palace of the Duke of Ferrara in the mid-16th century Renaissance Italy. Speaker of the poem is the Duke himself, and the 16th century speaker tells this story. That is, the Duke tells the story to a silent listener. Themes. What are the themes of this poem? We find it here. This poem actually, 16th century speaker, that is the Duke, tells the story. His wife gives attention to the other man. Actually, this affection causes the speaker to kill her. Her actions seriously upset him. When we analyze of the poem My Last Touches is the psychoanalytical framework. A poem by poet of the Victorian is Robert Browning. What are the themes we find? That the first theme is the pride. The Duke is very proud of his high social status and expensive professions. His wife's lack of subservience to his high social status actually infuriated him. Another theme of this poem, we find that is the jealousy. The Duke hated the way his wife would smile at other men. He suspects that she was unfaithful to him. This is the theme, the most important theme. That is, the first one is pride and the second one is the jealousy. What is the analysis and summary of the poem? Browning's this poem, My Last Touches, is about the Duke of Ferrara actually giving someone a tour of his home. This poem is narrated by the Duke to an envoy, a representative of another nobleman whose daughter the Duke is soon to marry. Browning helps us understand these details with his illustrative irony he employed in this poem. Throughout the whole poem, we get the sense that the Duke was in the mindset that he owns his wife and that she was only for him. His eyes only, that no one else could have her. Also, you feel like the Duke feels as if he was in power, even this wife, that he would have told her what to and not to do. The Duke said he would teach her a lesson. This is the summary of this poem. Whenever we read or the analysis this poem, we find that this poem is a psychoanalytical framework of the poem. Psychoanalytic framework of the poem, that is, this poem has the element of the psychoanalytical is reflected in this poem. When the Duke actually intends to flatter the envoy by giving him the privilege of beholding what he regards as an extraordinarily beautiful work of art, Duke finds satisfaction only in manipulating and controlling others. The Duke used his wife's supposed sallowness as an excuse, mainly to himself, for taking revenge on one who had unwillingly wounded his pretension, vanity. Here another symbol we find that is the statue of the Neptune is a psychological presentation of the Duke himself as both enjoy dominating what is beautiful and delicate, feminine, and the natural. This is the psychoanalytical elements we find in this poem. The first one is this poem actually satisfaction only in manipulation, that is the Duke satisfaction only finds his satisfaction only in manipulation and the controlling others, the way he always tries to manipulate and the controlling his wife. The Duke actually used his wife's supposed shallowness as an excuse, mainly to himself, for taking actually revenge on one who had unwillingly wounded his pretensions, vanity. And the another thing is that is the statue of Neptune is a psychological projection of the Duke himself as both enjoy dominating what is beautiful, delicate, feminine, and the natural. In conclusion, we can say that My Last Touch is actually published in that time, that is in the 16th century Renaissance Italy. The Duke, the speaker of this poem, this poem published in 1842 is actually Browning's most famous dramatic monologue. It engages the reader on a number of levels: historical, psychological, ironic, theoretical, and more. The most striking element of the poem is probably the speaker himself, the Duke. He can be identified as a monster since he had his wife murdered, yet he is impressively charming, both in his use of language and his affable address. He has a lovely sense of beauty and the art. Browning actually explored the contradiction and the movement and psychological complexity. Thanks for your participation. Have a nice day. Thank you.